All right, so we're joined by our next guest in our series of Falcon Time speakers for our seniors here at Velma Jackson, the amazing author and motivational speaker, Tonja Murphy. We thank you so much for taking
Mhm.
some time for us today, graduate of the great Jackson State University. So, thank you again for taking some time for us today.
Okay, thank you for having me. Again, I am Tonja Murphy, and I went to school in Jackson. I graduated from Murrah High School, and I took a really non-traditional route to college. I actually went to Hines Community College, Jackson State University, graduated from both of those schools, and I've done some leadership programs at Millsaps College. And so I actually worked in corporate settings for a very long time, and then had some life stuff and kind of got bit by the nonprofit bug. So I started working in nonprofit organizations with families, in housing, after school programs. I actually ran a program for kids who had incarcerated parents. I'll
Wow.
actually, find mentors for kids in those settings and, making sure that they're being mentored. Um, I've done creative writing with youth that are incarcerated. So all of those things. But with what I've done with when it comes to students, middle school and high school, I was like that programming, but I always wanted to have a book be a part of some of that programming, whether it was reading, whether it was writing, whether it was just things that were going on in the community that they could get involved in, those sorts of things. And so I did have a book club at a middle school. It was called the Eagle Eye Literary Club. The mascot for the school was the Eagles. And so it was the Eagle Eye Literary Club. And why I wanted to call it a literary club instead of a book club, because there were so many other things that the students could learn and be a part of it. Sometimes with students, they're part of groups and activities, but think about the things you learn when you're in a group. You learn leadership skills, you learn conflict resolution, you learn how to, accept a win, and you know how to accept a loss. You know how to share your opinion about something without it turning into an argument. And so those are the things that we would do with that literary club. But we would read books too. And that would be a part of the conversations like, okay, what could that character have done different in that situation? If you were a part of that group, how would you behave? If you needed to talk to your parent about something that was going on related to that, what would it look like? So tools are, books are tools, but it's also entertainment. But if I can get some entertainment with that tool in a book, you've read, you've been entertained, and you learn something. So I get really excited about, talking about books and how they're tools. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's cool because I know you've had several recent appearances where you've talked about this.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of kids are like, look, I've been made to read all through school. I hate reading. But you made a very valid point, and I could not agree with this more. You
Mm-hmm.
said, so you're telling me if you walked into a library or a
Mm-hmm.
bookstore, you're
Mm-hmm.
telling me that there's not a single book in here that you think is not about something that you would like. And I was like, that's a great point because obviously there's books
Yeah.
that I didn't like to read. There were books that I thought were stupid, but I can
Mm-hmm.
also think of a lot of books I really enjoyed reading. Everybody has different interests, and it's
Yeah.
great to not only, give yourself a positive aspect of continuing education, but also to
Yeah.
learn to, like you mentioned, all the benefits that come from that when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to talking about things.
Oh yeah. So you have to look at, what are the things you're interested in? And to your point about it's a book for everybody. What are you interested in? And I had this conversation with a student in a school library, and he was actually a reader, but he just felt like, hey, I've read all the books that I wanted in here. I've read all the books that the librarian suggested. I've read all the books that the English teacher suggested. I said, have a seat. Let's talk. I said, so what's your favorite basketball team or who's your favorite player? So he told me the team and he told me the player. And I said, is that the sport you like? Yeah, I like that sport. I said, let me give you some suggestions of books you can read based on what you just said. You said your favorite basketball player is from this city, this town. There are books about the place where the player is from. There actually might be books about the player. There are books about the history of basketball. There are books about the rules in basketball. And I said, "You got enough books you can find now?" He was like, "Yes, ma'am, I do." So it's just thinking about what you are interested in. There is something of interest. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great point because my favorite football player is Drew Brees. And he
Hmm.
published a book back in, I forget, 2012, 2013, about his injuries and about winning the Super Bowl, but he also talked about his life. And if
Yeah.
I had never read that, I would not know those things about him. He talked about his family issues, he talked about his injuries, he talked about his process of coming to the New Orleans Saints, he talked about the
Hmm.
things that went on in the locker room, things that went on in the field. And I was like, if you're a football fan, there's no way you wouldn't enjoy this. So it really
Yeah.
was just a matter of me sitting down, taking the time, a chapter or two a day, and I was finished with it within a month.
And for students or youth who say, I don't like to read or I don't want to read, I'd rather watch a series on some cable station. What most people don't know is a lot of what you watch on TV is based on a book. Read the credits. On Netflix, if it's based on a book, it'll show like right to the left of the screen on that home screen of that show is right there. A lot of things are based on a book. So if you like a certain thing to watch on TV, there's probably a book about it. So you can switch those things too. And I think one of the things that's important is with careers, and I know we're going to talk about careers and stuff. You can find a career doing something that you love. Like my actual job is I'm the community engagement director for the Mississippi Book Festival. So I get to do youth programming. I coordinate a program called Turn the Page, where I take authors and books around the state of Mississippi. And so you can find, what you like and whatever it is you're interested in and make it a career.
Yeah. Now, one thing you do such a great job of, and I just think there was more. I wish there was more programs like this. Is you use book clubs to bring people together to talk. And I know
Yeah.
you have what's called the Big Back Club, which has
Big
nothing to do
fat.
with eating.
Nothing to do with
Um,
eating.
but it stands for books. It stands for books and conversation. And before we go,
Conversation.
we'll get the details on that if they want to take part. But it is amazing, and especially since COVID, because COVID was such a
Mhm.
turning point in the way we do so many things. And
Yes.
it's the reason we're doing this. But
Hmm.
you have to look at all the things that young people dealt with. And
Yes.
and
Yes.
I'm not big on offering opinions, but one thing I've always said is that the transition after you leave high school to that next
Mm.
step in your life is the biggest transition you will ever make in your life, no
That's
matter
right.
what that decision is. So whether you're going straight to a college, a community college, going to the
Hmm.
military, start working, whatever.
Hmm.
We don't tell, we just give kids options. We let them make the decision. But that transition is hard for
It is.
anybody. I don't know who you are, but
Hmm.
finding ways to talk about things. And I know you've had some books on there that deal with grief. A lot of people lost people during COVID. You have
Yes.
books that deal with mental health. And a lot of people's mental health suffered during COVID because of the loneliness and the
Hmm.
isolation. And I say all the time, look, I like social media too. There's a lot of athletes I like to follow. I like seeing what they're doing. I like seeing things about I like following a lot of journalists to see what they're doing. But
Hmm.
find ways to put positive things in your life.
Yes.
Find something that's going to actually build you up instead of being depressed. And
Yes.
and obviously, social media has a lot of great uses, but find something to read, even if it's a magazine or if it's a publication about something that's going on. Be
Hmm.
informed about your world. If you don't like reading if you don't like reading fiction, find a biography, find some
So
local
many
news stories
genres.
to read.
Yeah. It's so
Because
many.
it's amazing how much more you'll be informed and how much better you feel when you can have a way to start those conversations that people have so much trouble having.
Hmm. So you mentioned one of the books that we talked about, what me and Kayla talked about on the show that'll be a part of the Big Back Book Club. And the book is called The Boy in the Black Suit. And it's by Jason Reynolds. Jason Reynolds, award-winning author, great books. And I discovered that book during COVID because what I had been doing, I was going into schools doing life skills programming. And just when COVID came, it just came to a screeching halt. Like on a Friday, kids didn't go back to school for the rest of the year. And so
Yep.
I wanted to still kind of stay in touch with the kids. And so I created an Instagram page. So we would do live life skill lessons every night, Monday through Friday. And so out of that came, okay, do some book reviews. So we had like New Release Tuesday. And so on New Release Tuesday, it would be a book, it would be a song, that sort of thing. And of course, I'd read the book and I could tell them about the book, get excited about it. Maybe they wanted to read it, maybe they didn't, but they knew about it. If it was new music that came out, I would listen to the song and I'm like, hey, this is what they're saying. Talk about the artist, that sort of thing. But that book came out of that. And that young man's experience in the book, he was going through grief. He had lost his mother. Man walks into where he works and says, hey, you can make more money working for me in one day than you're making working in 1 week. And it was a place like a Church's or Popeyes, a little local
Yeah.
local chicken place.
Yeah.
And he said, well, do I have to see any dead bodies? Because he knew this man worked at a funeral home or owned a funeral home. And he was like, no, all you need is a black suit. That's all you need. So he would attend the services and he would always make eye contact with someone there. And he would make that connection. And that helped him cope and that helped him with his grief. It was so many kids that had lost family, lost friends. And grief does not necessarily mean it's a person you lost. You can lose a thing and grieve. And, just having that conversation and having that tool to talk to them about it. I mean, and shout out to Jason Reynolds for even writing that for kids. It's like, yeah, I feel this. Nobody's talking to me about it, but here's something that we can talk about, and know that you're not having you're having a hard time, but let's talk about it. Let's really, really talk about it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and also, and because you mentioned about how you can relate to characters in the book. It is
Mhm.
amazing how many authors are out there that really gear toward high school and college students to try to
Mhm.
persuade them to make the best decisions. Because,
Mhm.
you know, and going back to the social media thing, we talk about how it's been such a hindrance because it's just become almost an addiction for so many people.
Yes.
And again, I'm not saying it's all bad, but
Yeah.
find ways to relate. And like we said, I was always a big biography reader because I
Mhm.
could learn things about the people and
Yeah.
saw how they dealt with how they dealt with adversity. And I'm glad you mentioned too, because I know you've taught life skills, and in that book it talks about professionalism. Small things because
Yes.
we have a ton of people that say, "Look, I don't want to go to college." Okay, that's fine. You're still going to have to learn how to be professional. Learn how to
Mhm.
walk in a room and introduce yourself. Learn how to
Mhm.
look people in the eye and shake their hand. Learn how to write. You may read something and say, man, that sounded really good. When I write a resume, I think I should put that on there. So, what are some other things you're seeing people are learning just from taking a little bit of time to read?
Oh, okay. So, and I'm so glad you asked that question, Greg. I'm so glad. So, and just going back to this book by Jason, in that book, even though it's talking about grief, in a book, you're going to have layered stories and different things. So, the main character, there's a girl that he likes. There is a girl that he likes. And so they kind of talk about, him liking her and how they navigate going on dates and kind of seeing each other. And so, what does a date when it's somebody that you really like? What does that look like? That's something else that students and youth can see in books. It's like, oh, that was nice. He was very respectful. When he went to ask her parents, like, is it okay if I take your daughter on a date? Was it okay? I knew to go up to the door, ring the doorbell, and wait for mom or dad to come to the door. It's so many things like, that really makes sense. So it's so many things that, they can be taught from those stories. But also, it gives an opportunity to talk about, what do you think about this? What do you think about what's going on as it relates to your own life? What would this look like in your life if this was happening? And the next question could be, are you fortunate that your life doesn't look like this? And you have parents in your life and guardians and family that love you. Because some of these books, the family dynamic does not look like, what a family might look like for that person reading. But can you be thankful based on something that you read that's actually real life for someone? So it's just so many things, so many things. Yeah.
Now, obviously, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the significance of you being here during February, Black History Month.
Yes.
Because one thing I always say, and I know they get so sick of me saying this, and if I'm out of line to them, that's fine. I always
Okay.
say Black History Month should not mean more to me than it does to them.
Mm,
And and I know they're young, and a lot of things have changed since they were born. But I think
mhm.
it's so important to look at these Black authors that talk about the struggles that
Yes.
this country had during segregation and Jim Crow laws and
Mm,
Reconstruction to understand some of the things that their ancestors went through.
mm.
Because it was not that long ago, it wasn't in my lifetime,
Not.
but it was in
Mhm,
my parents' lifetime where there literally had to be military action for every Black person to have the right to vote. It was in
mhm,
my grandparents' lifetime that every woman was finally given the right to vote, and that was
mhm,
before. And that was just women in general. So there was a time when they didn't have the right to go in the same bathroom. They didn't have the right to go to the same school. So
mm.
why is it so important to look at some of the Black authors during Black History Month to understand just how far we've gone and how far we still can go?
Oh, that's a great question. So the reason why, not only during Black History Month, but all year, that youth should be looking at Black authors is because one, a lot of history. You need to look at the history of some things. And then also, sometimes with social media, the narrative that's controlled with social media is they're only going to show you certain things. But social media cannot control what happens when you pick up a book and reading those things. So I think it's really important that you know your history. You know some of those things. And when you know your history, you can understand why we are where we are right now. And you can be a part of what it will look like in the future. But if you don't know what happened in the past, you can't impact that now. I want to switch it up a little bit too. Yes, you know the history. You know all of those things that were not necessarily great for Black people. You know that. But there are also some good, positive, purposeful stories that are being told. Everything that a Black author writes is not negative. It's not, a certain narrative that, we were enslaved and all of that. Some of them are writing real life stories that speak to what is positive going on. They talk about families, they talk about community, they talk about all those things. So, yes, you need to read all of the books, all the different, blend it up, mix it up. So you will know, like, how, as a youth, how can I change what's going on based on what happened, what's happening in my world right now, and how am I going to impact what happens in the future and right now? So, yeah.
Yeah, and I want to encourage, for people that see this later, I want to encourage, even if a student is not Black, read something by a Black author.
Mm-hmm.
Read something that may change, it may not change your mind, but at least it'll give you more perspective into something to understand where people are coming from. Because like you said, reading can give you the tools to learn how to
Mm-hmm.
learn how to see other viewpoints.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm never going to I never tell kids how to think. I never tell them what opinion to have, but I do think it's important to get all the information to make the best decision based on your personal views. And I think as a public school teacher, that's my role. And I think finding ways to read and get informed on their own does more than just what we can do for them.
And like you said, you don't tell them what to do, but making sure that they have the tools that they can make a decision for themselves. And the add on to that is make a decision that you can live with. Because Miss Murphy's gonna go on and do what she do. Mr. Pocket gonna go on and do what they do. You're gonna have to live with that decision. So making sure that the adults in your life, the tools that you need to have, whether it's through books or conversations, take advantage of those so you can make the best decisions that you can live with. So yeah, yeah.
Now, one more thing I want to talk about, and then we'll get the information on the Big Back Club. But I mentioned before we started recording, my grandmother is 95 years old, and
Mm-hmm.
she reads two or three books a week.
Mm-hmm.
And you cannot convince me. And it's been such a blessing because even at 95, she is so mentally sharp. She remembers everything. She's never had any cognitive issues. And it is literally unbelievable how sharp she has stayed into her age. And
Mm-hmm.
you cannot convince me that her reading so much is not a huge part of that. So when we
Mm-hmm.
talk about mental health, we talk about cognitive ability, you know,
Mm-hmm.
when you're, everybody has family members that have started slipping in their old age.
Mm-hmm.
That's the ultimate equalizer. It affects everybody. But
Mm-hmm.
little things like that, how much does reading help your mental health? To even just do a little bit, because my grandmother is a perfect example of someone that has always read all types of genres from all types of authors, and it
Mm-hmm.
just keeps her mind sharp and keeps her on her toes. And no matter what her body does, her brain is not going anywhere.
Oh, well, I'm gonna tell you, when it comes to keeping you sharp, one of the things that I have to add this so I won't forget. So I because I really want the students to hear this. Readers make great writers. You're doing a lot of writing. Students who don't like to write is because they don't like to read. But if you read and your vocabulary is there, the words will come out just like that when you're writing. So spend some time reading so you can become the writer that you need to be. So it won't be like, oh my goodness, I got to write this essay. Oh my goodness, I got to write this for my college application. But if you've been reading, the vocabulary is there and it will come out of you because of what you put in you with the book. Okay. Now, as far as keeping you sharp, in the South, we love a good story. We love a good story. So if you got a book or books that have great stories and great storytelling, it keeps you sharp. Also, a book will take you away from whatever is going on. You can just go right into that book, get right into that story, and you're in another world. You're in a whole nother world. And then also, it helps you to navigate conversations you have with other people. But if you have to focus on a story, good example. If you're reading a psychological thriller, you got to pay attention because you might miss a tiny detail. Your mind has to be sharp. So that's why it's important to read the different genres. So read different genres, enjoy those stories, increase that vocabulary. All of those things come from reading books.
Now, and one thing I did want to mention, this actually has nothing to do with books, but I think we need to talk about this
Okay.
because obviously, we got seniors and they're wanting to go to college, and I hear several of
Mhm.
them talk about how they have interest in the MPHC organizations.
Okay.
Um, and all of them have done just such great work around the area. And I know you're
Mhm.
a proud member of Zeta Phi Beta,
I
as
am.
we have a couple here at our school here at Velma Jackson. But
Mhm.
if kids, we all see the step shows and we all see the strolling and all that is, and people think I'm joking. I've actually judged a step show in my life, so
Oh
they are a
wow.
lot. Yeah, they are a lot of fun. If you never
Okay.
when you get to college, even if you're an MPHC or not, go. You'll have a great time.
Mhm.
But we see all that. We see the colors and all that. But there is
Mhm.
so much more that goes into it. There's academic
Yes.
excellence. There's community service. So if
Yes.
kids are considering being a part of any of the great MPHC organizations, whether as a undergrad or a graduate chapter
Mhm.
here
Mhm.
or anywhere, what are some
Mhm.
things they really need to know that they don't really see from the 19, 20-year-olds wearing the jackets?
Oh, okay. Great question. One of the things is it's a commitment. It's more than colors. It's more than letters. It's more than stepping. It's more than paraphernalia, the jackets and the shirts and all of those things. It's so much more to it than that. It is a commitment. It's a commitment to the founding principles of their organization. It's about scholarship. So if you don't like schoolwork or you don't like to maintain a certain GPA and you want to just slide by, joining any of those organizations is going to be out of reach for you. It's going to be out of reach for you. If you don't like community service, if you don't like serving, period. And I will say this, volunteering and serving are two different things. It's two different things. In those organizations, we actually serve in the community. We serve in the community. So if that's something you want to be involved in, there's a commitment. There's a financial commitment, time commitment, those sorts of things. Yes, the pictures are nice. The step shows are nice. The parties are nice. But our founding principles of all of those organizations is about service and scholarship. So if you don't want to do that, how about you just buy a shirt? You can get it any color, and you can get your name in any color you want across your chest or up your sleeve. Do that.
Yeah, because I have some friends that are my age that are Omega Psi fives, and they're like, man, there ain't no way we're doing all the hopping anymore.
Oh
But they're just
no,
but they're still doing a lot of great things in the community, and I
great
just
work.
I kid with my Q Dog friends, but I always thought that was funny. But we're almost out of time, and we thank you
Okay,
so much for taking some
you
time for
are
us. But before
welcome.
we go, we need to
Huh.
know the info on the Big Back Book Club if anybody's interested, because it's open to everybody there on Briarwood.
Yeah. Okay, so the Big Back Book Club is the Big Books and Conversation Book Club that happens at Broward Art Center, also known as the Back. It happens the second Monday of every month from 6 to 7. Every month, second Monday from 6 to 7 at the Briarwood Art Center.
Yeah, and everybody's welcome. And like you said, even if they haven't read the book yet, they're welcome
Even
to
if they
come and
haven't read
discuss
the
it because, like we said, the books
hmm
lead to conversations that need to be had. So, first of all, it could be great networking for people to
hmm
meet people their age that may have some similar goals and to talk about some of these things that they may be interested in. So, we'll definitely get this out to everybody in the district. I'll send this to my JPS friends and my Canton High friends as well. So, we thank you so much for joining us, the great author Tonja Murphy from right down the road in Jackson. Thank you so much for
right
joining
down the
us today.
road. All right, thank you.
I talk to you soon, buddy.
All right, bye bye.